Oh yeah, that was on the Pulaski. I wanted to go to Locksmith school. It was awfully hard to get into, and it was only if the command needed a locksmith that you ever got it. So I kept trying to get into locksmith school, and I had played around with safes a little bit. And on the Pulaski, there seemed to always be a problem with some safe or other. Usually they'd forgotten the combination or forgotten what the sequence of numbers were, or this sort of thing. So at one time or another, I had opened about half the locks on the boat. The gunnery officer came to my bunk, woke me up one night in the wee hours of the morning, about 2 o'clock in the morning, and wanted to know if I'd open a combination lock for him. He said, I've got to offload a torpedo at 8 o'clock in the morning, and until you unlock this, no way I can do it. What he wanted was the lock on a chastity belt on the torpedo. It was a band that went around the torpedo, and it made it so you could not get to the screws to separate a warhead from the body of the torpedo. He remembered 2 of the numbers. He didn't know in what sequence, but he knew that he thought he knew that these 2 were in the combination. So I said, okay, I'll see what I can do. I said, and it was in a torpedo skid, so I had to get under the torpedo and squat. And the lieutenant held a watch, and the lock itself had a knurled knob about the size of a quarter. And it was a new lock, and it was hard to turn. So I got to work this lock. By the time it was over, I'd worn almost all the skin off my finger. But it took me about 2 hours, and I finally got the lock open, because I was using his 2 numbers and then worked through the numbers on the lock until I finally got them in the right sequence. And he was most appreciative. Kept him out of the deep darks. So the next day, he came to the Radio Shack and he said, "Chief," he said, "I got a lock here that you can have, the same type lock. You can have to play with." He said, "Maybe you'd like to see if you can open it." And I said, what's wrong?" He said, "Nothing that I know of." He said, "No one knows the combination to it." And I said, "Okay, all right, I'll play with it." So he stepped out of the Radio Shack and closed the door, and he was, as he stepped into the passageway, he was talking to one of the other officers. He'd been out there about 30, 45 seconds, and I opened the door and handed him the lock. And he said, "Hey, Chief, you gave up already?" And I said, "No, I opened it for you." He said, You opened it?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Was the combination written down?" And I said, "No." And he said, "You opened it?" I said, "Yeah, I opened it." He said, "You mind telling me how you do that? How you did that?" And I said, "Macy's does not tell gimbals." And he said, "Okay." He said, "I won't ask you again." But about 30 minutes later, the exec came to Radio Shack and he said, "Chief," he said, "I'm going to have to talk to you." And I said, "Okay, fine." He said, "Now, I know you're an honest man, but," he said, "I've got to ask you anyway to do me a favor." And I said, "Okay, what's the favor?" He said, "Please, do not play around with the old man's safe." I promised him I would not. But what I did not tell the lieutenant, combination locks come with preset combination to preset numbers. So and there maybe a half a dozen of them. So I tried one. Maybe it was 25, 50, 25. But it happened that the first one I tried was the one that it came from the factory with. And I never did tell the lieutenant how I opened it.